Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mailo. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another special guest episode. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Kevin Mailo. I'm Mello, he's Milo. People butcher our names, but we're rolling with it today. And we're going to be talking about kind of a shared mission that we have to empower physicians to really take ownership of their lives in whatever way that looks. And so Dr. Mailo is an ER physician in Alberta, Canada, and he's going to share some jewels with us today. So, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Megan. I am really glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself before we launch into our discussion today.
Yeah, so I am a full-time ER doctor here in Western Canada. I do a little bit of family practice as well that I recently recertified as a primary care physician. But what I'm really passionate about is education within the profession. So I've started a couple of podcasts over the years. I've got a medical podcast that we started back probably 2014 or 2015. And then I started another venture that's really near and dear to my heart called Physician Empowerment. And that's an educational organization dedicated to transforming the lives of physicians through education and wellness, education and finances, because our finances are intimately tied to our well-being, as well as practice management and leadership. So it's been a very, very exciting journey. And yeah, it's really where my heart is, Megan.
Yeah. I think your story highlights, as we'll hear a little bit too, that we're all on a journey. I think many of us came into medicine thinking, oh, I'm gonna finish my training and I'm just going to go and do one thing and I'm going to be set. And I think in both of our stories, we hear pieces of like, no, that's not actually how things shook out. But I'll have you start off by, we always talk about kind of what is the story? Like, how did you get to this place? Where were you having problems with burnout or struggling? And when did you start to realize that kind of parts of medicine were much more challenging or difficult than you had initially anticipated beyond just learning, the human body?
Yeah. So I graduated into practice, I think it was 29 years old. I was young. I was full of energy. I had done very well in residency and I really loved my job. I still absolutely love my job, especially my patients and my nursing and allied health colleagues. It's a very interdisciplinary environment in the ER. And so it can be a lot of excitement, but also a lot of fun. And you go in and you work and you have so much enthusiasm and so much, I think, of the medicine and science of practice is exciting. But what you come up against is the reality of the system that we work in, that any system we work in has its imperfections, has its very real challenges. And I think for me, after having done it for somewhere around 5 years or so, I, started to experience a change because you realize that your patients bear the consequences of system level issues. And then more importantly, as frontline staff, we bear those consequences of system level issues when there are no beds or no ambulances. Your patient doesn't have a family doctor that she or he can follow up with. Yeah. Those things start to take a toll, right? It becomes very, very real for you. Probably on a deeper level, about 5 years into practice, I had sort of looked at my life personally and professionally. And I think if you looked on paper, you would say, this person has everything. Honestly, I would look and I would check between money and status and education and 4 beautiful children. I had so much. But then you look at your career and you realize that you aren't your career. You are something more than that. And I think that was a questioning for me at that stage was, is there something more to us than just our career? And is this what I'm going to do for the next 30 years? Like just kind of punch the clock? And that's when things started to change for me, when I really started to ask those bigger questions of like, what do I want out of my life? What do I want out of my career? How do I want to feel every day? And here's the challenge that I bring to my physician clients when we kind of do our own coaching, or when I'm speaking in front of a group of colleagues. Say, if not now, when?
Mm-hmm.
If I am not happy and thriving this year, today, when am I going to? Because I was there, right? I had checked all of the boxes.
Right.
I'd gone through medical
I'd
school.
arrived, right?
I'd arrived, and I wasn't as happy as I could be.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge,
Yeah.
personally and professionally. So I started making a lot of big changes, and I'm much happier for having done it and lived boldly. But it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And it was a long process of change.
Yeah. And it's such a common issue that people grapple with, kind of a few things in there. There's that arrival fallacy, right? That once I achieve X, once I do this thing or that thing or have this thing, I should be happy. And that happiness that we might experience that, right? Like if we graduated from residency, right? We were happy and proud of ourselves usually for a bit, but that's fleeting. It just is, right? So there's that part of it too, but also that identity piece that you mentioned, right? That feeling of, am I a physician above all else? Or am I a person who has a job, career, calling, like whatever you want to label it, but also I'm also a human on the side, or human up front and a doctor on the side, kind of whatever way we want to organize that. Because I think a lot of us get to this part in our life and we're like, well, if I'm a physician, do I get special credit, or should something else in my life be easier? Should the kids be better behaved or something?
Yeah.
And we find that doesn't seem to be true, right?
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, let me go further and say, even just having lost that connection with the inner child, that when we started this long journey, shortly after our teenage years, we're full of like dreams and ambitions and hopes. And somewhere along the line, being a grown-up ground that out of us.
Yes.
And
grown up at a pretty young age.
Yeah. And you actually are forced to hit
that
that at a very young age, between the schooling and the training and the level of responsibility that we have. I mean, we deal in people's lives.
Yeah.
But like, it's a sadness, it's a loss when we're no longer connected to the inner child, when we're no longer connected to our youthful dreams and ambitions. The other reflection I had is the materialism. It's so empty. I remember I would sit around with my colleagues and I would hear about like what everybody's buying, houses, vacations. And I just realized like none of that appeals to me. And it's funny because I teach finance. I actually teach finance for doctors. I'm an avid real estate investor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very strong believer in wealth creation and having parallel sources of income outside of our day jobs. But I don't want any of it to buy things because it doesn't make you happy. It's there for security and time. And so, I don't know, like you get so caught up in the long work hours that you forget to take time and celebrate the beauty of the moment in everyday living.
Yeah. Well, speak a little bit more to that financial piece too, because I think there can be a lot of, desire for more time for ourselves or our families, more freedom, less of this sort of golden handcuff phenomenon. And yet we also tend to feel a lot of tension about not wanting to be greedy. As physicians in our various healthcare systems, right, we can see that there's incredible disparity in the way that everybody is paid, right? We look at, ER and primary care compared to some of our surgical colleagues, that insurance companies in the US can just decide, oh, we're not paying that. Or patients to some extent too. They can also just kind of default and then we don't get paid. But you're noticing more of a connection of when we have this sort of financial stability, right? When we have something that we can rely on that's not just our medical work, that connects with that higher sort of spiritual pursuit.
Oh, without question, Megan. I've got a talk that I give to residency programs. It's growing more and more across the country. I'm speaking to different residency programs, and I talk about money being an ingredient, not the cake, right? And
Mhm.
so when you look at it from that perspective, you realize that number one, the pursuit of money should not be the goal here, but you should have enough so that you can really, really fall back in love with your job,
Mhm.
right? Because I think the vast majority of us would do our work if we didn't have to, even if we weren't paid, we would sit there and we would still go in because we love our patients. We love people we work alongside. We love the impact we make in the community, the intellectual stimulation, the list goes on. But the key is you do have to do money right. And money cuts both ways. I mean, you can earn lots, but then you can spend lots.
Mhm.
Like it's very easy. We call it like lifestyle creep. At physician empowerment, we call it cost inflation, right? You start earning those paychecks, you go out and buy a bigger house, but all of a sudden your student IKEA furniture doesn't look good in the living room. So you buy new furniture and the roof needs to be replaced, but it's $40,000, not $10,000. Right? The car doesn't look good in the driveway. So you get a new one, but then that car has $5,500 service appointments. And before you know it, you're actually more broke than you were when you were a resident or whatever. Not that that's everybody's path, but you can see how that comes into play. And then you realize that you're actually working a certain number of hours per week, per month, per year to pay your basic necessities, which leaves you feeling tired and burnt out, like you're not getting ahead.
Yeah.
And that's when money starts to kind of creep into the patient interaction and things. I mean, the dream I have for physicians that come through our program, the dream that I have for myself is that you have enough money coming in through parallel sources because you've been a smart saver, you've done tax planning, you've invested so that you don't have to worry about what you're bringing in every week, every month, every year, because you know that you are going to become financially secure for retirement, irrespective of your ability to earn in practice. And it allows you to really slow down and enjoy your patients and enjoy your work and set boundaries. Because there are aspects to my job that are unpaid. And it used to frustrate me like nobody's business. And now I just kind of like shrug it off. I mean, money comes, it goes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and talk a little bit about sort of scarcity mindset kind of associated with that too, because you're right that spending creep, that lifestyle creep can happen too. But also there can be this scarcity where we feel like it's never enough, right? That guidepost or goalpost rather continues to move. Okay, well, I think I need this much to be comfortable. Well, now it's this much and now it's this much. And we never get there.
Oh, exactly. It's a never ending hunger or thirst for more.
Yeah.
And that I think takes an enormous toll on us. And I mean, ambition is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm extremely ambitious, but ambition in these domains of like this competitiveness, whether it's the car we drive, the home we have, how much we bill, what kind of a warrior we are going into the hospital and working 80 hours a week, to kind of wear that as a badge of honor, which I actually don't think should be celebrated. I actually think the strength is to work less.
Right. Strength is to say, I'm done for today. Bye.
I'm done. I've set my boundaries. I'm going home.
Yeah.
Even athleticism. I mean, yes, it's important to have boundaries, but realizing that there isn't necessarily a natural limit on our own ambitions and competitiveness. And we have to be mindful of that, right? Because I have met people worth tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, and some of them want more. Or others, they regret the pursuit because they missed out on so much, whether it's families or their health or their youth, whatever have you has gone by. So there's a balance. There's always a balance, right? And the same thing goes in our career. I mean, you want to go in and improve yourself all the time, all the time, all the time. You want to climb the ladder. You want the promotions and the status. Sure, but at what cost? If it's a cost to your relationships, your marriage, your kids, your personal health, even just missed out on memories or travel or experiences, right? There's a balance here. And fundamentally, we are all a very small part of a much larger healthcare system. So I think there's an element of ego there that needs to be rebalanced, right? And approaching it from a perspective of humility, I think is very powerful. Because in the end, the criteria should be, am I happy right now? Stop living in the future being like, I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I'll be happy when I earn a certain amount. I'll be happy when I have this house. That we know doesn't make us happy. That, like you said earlier, Megan, that's a rival fallacy. And so it's, It's how do I check in and become present and happy now? Because if not now, when?
Yeah.
Like, if you aren't happy within the first 5 years of practice, when you paid off your student loans, settled in a house, maybe you're starting a family or whatever, then you probably aren't actually going to be happy. And I feel fairly qualified to say that after having spoken to hundreds of physicians and having lived it myself.
Yeah.
So now it's a choice of what are you going to do to be happy now?
Yeah. How are you going to shape your life, shape your thoughts? You pursue what you really want within medicine or outside.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you. So you hit this kind of mark around 5 years and came to this realization that we're struggling with kind of this, am I a physician first or am I Kevin first? What did you do when you had sort of hit that part?
Yeah. So when I hit that part, it was actually a very gradual process. I don't think there were any aha moments for me. It was just, I was somewhat systematic though in looking at the smallest aspects of my personal life and the smallest aspects of my career and saying, what needs to change? And even going through that exercise of like, sketch out the ideal you, not a perfect person that isn't you, not referencing somebody else, but the best version of you. Like there is never going to be a Kevin that skips fast food and runs ultra marathons. I'm sorry, not him. There'll be something in the middle.
Yeah.
And so it's okay. So now I know where that is. And I always use the image of a landscape of your life, right? So you set that goal out on the horizon and you say, okay, so that's where I want to be. And then you just start taking small steps. And for me, it was schedule changes. It was learning to invest and make money outside of medicine, right? It was being more vulnerable, I think, with myself, even being more vulnerable with my colleagues, setting boundaries at work about volumes that I'm going to see or picking up extra shifts, even though we're short staffed, and saying, actually, I need this time for myself or I need this time for family. Like there's so many small things you can do in your career that lead to massive change. And you wake up and you're like, wow, I'm not tired anymore. I'm not super stressed out. I don't want to pull my hair out. And the same things can be done in your personal life in all domains, whether it's how you eat, how you interact with your loved ones, how you look at yourself, right? I mean, you can spend time in therapy. You can spend time with a coach, right? Like you can actually access very concrete resources to make your life better. Yeah. And yeah, you have to put in the work, but guess what? We're all used to working. We didn't get here because we didn't like to work. So turn the attention and the energy inward and look at the things in your life that you want different and then start making change, even if it's painful, even if it's hard, even if it leads to conflict with others. Yeah. In the end, you have to be happy now. It is not going to fall out of the sky. It will not. And you are at the definition of insanity if you let another year go by, living it like the last one, but hoping something different is going to come along or that you're going to feel different.
Yeah.
So I try to be brutally honest with myself on that.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, that there wasn't just this light bulb moment flash and everything changed, right? We didn't have that religious experience. It was being mindful of what is your ideal version of you and making little changes, the little slow, boring changes that is really a part of fixing things, right? Because very few of us will ever experience a sudden, I made one decision and here we go. I'm a totally different person. But it's hard to talk about it's hard to be at that place, right? Where you're feeling really challenged, really broken, really burnt out and seeing this path of little change, little change, little change. That's the answer as opposed to some big sweeping realization, right? We want the movie version.
Yeah, we all want the movie version. And I'll tell you, a big part of it is simply working fewer hours. If you want the first place to start, it starts with working fewer hours.
Yeah.
Because in those quieter moments, we actually have time to look inward. I was once challenged to stop turning the cameras outward and looking at everyone else's problems, trying to be helpful all the time to everyone else, whether it's family, friends, the system, your spouse, and actually stop and say, what do I need? Because we often don't even know the question, let alone the answer.
Yeah.
So take time to sit with yourself. And it doesn't have to be as informal as meditation. It can just be like, take a week off, get out of town, and just do not pick up the EMR. Do not check your email. Even just driving to work without anything on in silence and just sit, right? And so turn the cameras inward and then start saying to yourself, what do I want? And be honest with yourself. Like, this is your own space. Like, what does your inner child want? It can be silly, right?
Yeah.
And then go for it. Pursue it. Connect with those feelings, because you don't know where you're going until you've answered some of those questions or asked some of those questions.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really powerful. And again, I'm going to come back to the issue of money. If you live comfortably, but below your means, and you've learned to save and invest, you can create as much time as you need. That's what was so powerful in my life, was not having a ton of stress about money because I didn't have a giant mortgage and car payment.
Yeah.
Like I said, I create a lot of wealth in real estate. I've done very well. I'm very happy. But it's not about buying more things. It's about buying time, which is the single most valuable resource in our lives. None of us is getting any more of it. So like, use it carefully.
Yeah.
And you can outsource, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Hire people to help you. Yeah. And I don't know if you have conversations with your clients about this, but one of the challenges with money in medicine is that in order to make more money in medicine, if we're thinking, oh gosh, I need more, right? We're coming from that sort of scarcity place, is that to make more, you have to do more. You have to see more patients. And what you're saying is that when we are smart with our money in different ways, when we are creating wealth in some other way, we no longer have to increase the volume of the medical work in order to have financial stability, financial security, which is a big piece that I think a lot of people are missing.
And yeah, we all trade time for money. And in fact, I encourage all of my clients to calculate their hourly rate. And this does not just include time in front of the patient.
Yeah.
This is time spent on
charting,
charting, your EMR, your continuing medical education.
Yeah.
Every email you have to answer. Even if you hate it, even your drive to work should count as part of your hourly rate. And that's when you discover how dismal it is for the level of education you have and the amount of stress and liability you carry.
Yeah.
Because this is a very high stress industry that we work in.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you appreciate that, you can look at it from a negative perspective and say, well, that's frustrating. Now I'm really down in the dumps. Thanks, Kev. Or you can turn around and you can say, okay, so what am I going to do differently? And this is where you move your mindset from being that kind of high earning professional to truly a wealth mindset. And you move away from scarcity and you stop worrying about your volumes and you stop worrying about whether you can take vacation or not. And when you move to a wealth mindset, what you're really doing is you're opening the door to passive income through other sources, right? Like I use real estate as an example, and I'm a very big proponent of it for physicians, just because of some of the tax advantages, but also the relative ease in which you can invest. But real estate, if it's done well, can provide you with an income-based existence that is independent if you're going to work, and it will outlast you in retirement, and it will outlast you even after death. And so that's a very powerful force in your life for a lot of peace of mind and a lot of opportunity to step back. And that's the prosperity mindset that I really encourage physicians to look at. And again, that number may be surprisingly low to make you happy if you have realigned your spending and your values, right? Like I'm a pretty down to earth guy. I drive an old truck. I live in a 1960s bungalow, and I couldn't be happier. I have some real estate that's worth a lot more than my primary residence, and I couldn't be happier. living my very simple life because it reminds me of my inner child and my upbringing. And it's what I want for my kids is
life with intention, right?
Life with intention. And I'm free. You know, last month we were in Japan, my partner and I, and it was incredible, right? I mean, I want experiences. That's where I want to spend my money. So everyone's different. You don't get me wrong. There's no formula here, but it's simply as simple as, you know, you live below your means, you generate enough margin to invest, and then you invest. And again, just like the personal change, it starts small and it's frustrating. You're like, well, I'm not noticing a difference. But then you flash forward 5 years and you're like, wow, actually, things are looking pretty good. I'm really happy. And then at 10 years, you start saying, I might be able to quit my day job or go a very limited part-time because I'm not worried about money anymore. It's starting to compound. That's the other very powerful concept in the prosperity mindset is the notion of compound growth. It is not just for bacteria and COVID viruses. It is for all of us, right? I mean, if you don't touch that, like if you put $1 million into private equity and like, let's say after taxes in Canada, you're doing like 8%, that rapidly grows if you just contribute a little bit of your extra earnings to that. And it soon becomes $2 million and then $3 million. And then you start wondering why you even go to work. Definitely not for the paycheck, just for the love of the job.
Yeah.
So it is attainable. It just takes some discipline and some time.
Yeah. Well, and going back to what you were saying about kind of figuring out the hourly rate, incorporating all the extra work that we do outside of the patient hours, there's also opportunity there when you said to work less, right? Part of working less is not just cutting shifts or the FTE, right? But decreasing that extra time that you're spending on all those other tasks, right? Decreasing the amount of time that you're spending on charting and inbox work after hours, right? On your own time, trying to make all of those things better, right? So that you're not giving that time away and diluting your own value.
Oh,
and
exactly.
Challenges for all of us, right? But they're doable.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, really take time to think about how much of your life is consumed with your EMR and your inbox and emails and useless meetings and phone calls, right?
But do that, right, with the decision that I want to make a change, not just to wallow.
No, you don't wallow. You make small change, right?
Yeah.
You make small change and it takes time. I'll share another reflection on the notion of happiness. A lot of happiness is tied to the idea that things are getting better. Not that they're perfect now, but that they're getting better, right? So like, it doesn't have to be perfect for you to be happy. If you feel like you are in more control of your life and that things are getting better, then you will be substantially happier, in my opinion. Right? Like if you say, you know what, actually, compared to last year, I'm charting less. I'm still charting too much, but I'm charting less.
Yeah.
Or I feel great about blowing off this useless meeting we have every quarter.
Yeah. Didn't make a difference.
Yeah. Or I actually feel good capping my practice for the time being while I catch up with my existing patient load.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small change like that all of a sudden allows us to at least feel like we can, like we're getting a little bit more breathing space and that things might be better the year following.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to that small steps thing, right?
Oh yeah. And they are easy to do. Yeah. They are easy to do. That's what makes it great. You don't need to have a mountain
than just about everything else we've learned how to do, right?
Yeah. And the only thing easier is to do the same. That's the only thing I'll challenge you on, right? It's far easier to just say yes when yes is the default, but no is the right answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of this reflects our training, and a lot of this reflects the inherent conscientiousness and sense of duty that we have as physicians.
Yeah.
When we're asked to do another task, our first reaction is yes, and that's often in the moment the easiest. But the better answer is no. And it's not just the best answer for you. It's actually the best answer for the patient and the system to set boundaries and force the system to adjust by whether it's bringing on more staff or coming up with more efficient processes. But you just throwing yourself against the wall one more day doesn't fix the system. It enables it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you said that. So you've shared a lot with us, and I always wrap up our conversations here by asking you, for someone who's listening who maybe finds themselves at that 5-year mark and they heard your story and they're like, oh gosh, I don't think I'm happy. I feel like I'm constantly sort of chasing things. What do you want that person who's feeling that way right now to know that you wish that you had known at that stage?
You aren't alone. You are not alone in that struggle. We all suffer from that. And one of the most difficult aspects to suffering is that feeling like we must be the only ones going through it, because everybody outwardly seems so happy and fulfilled. Yeah. But the reality is, and again, speaking with some authority here, having spoken to hundreds of physicians, is that's not the case. We all have struggles. So you are not alone. And you can connect with Megan. I always take those calls. Right? If somebody wants to reach out and say, you know what, I'm feeling burnt out. I need to do something different in my career or finances, like talk to me, because I'm passionate about transforming the lives of physicians. We deserve better. We deserve to be happy and thriving now. Mm-hmm. And our patients and communities deserve it as well.
Yeah.
So you are not alone.
You're not alone. Yeah. You heard it here. We've said it before. That's the most common thing, that whenever we're talking about, we are not alone. We are not broken. We are not unique in that fear that we're the only one who's experiencing this.
Yeah.
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 Kevin, thank you so much for joining me here today. It was a pleasure talking with you. For someone who is interested in learning more about your work, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can Google physician empowerment. I'm sure we'll pop up. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, or you can go to physempowerment.ca and come and join us that way.
Well, great. We will include links to all of that in the show notes so people can have an easy time finding you. My friends, thank you so much for tuning in as always. And be sure to check out Kevin's podcast as well. Kevin, can you remind us the name of the podcast?
It's also the Physician Empowerment Podcast, and that should be on all the major platforms.
Perfect. All right. So check them out there. My friends, until next week, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.